Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Stand Up and Take Action with Stand Up California. I'm Karen, and I will be your host today. I'm also the executive director for Stand Up California. And if you haven't already joined your community, your county community, visit our website at standupcalifornia.com to join your community of advocates and get the latest California news from our team. Today, we have a jam-packed episode for you. We will be breaking down everything you need to know in regards to Vax requirements in California. This is specifically for private and public schools in California, and it does affect K through 12 grades. We will be covering exactly what Vax requirements there are to enroll your child in school, what options do you have, and if you have a child with exceptional needs, you will be hearing from the leading California organization whose mission is to help families like yours. We will also be hearing what the organizations represented today are doing as far as litigation and health rights in California. We are breaking this episode into two incredible parts, so let's just dive right in. You might be familiarized with two important bills that shifted the way Vax requirements were implemented in California for children to be enrolled in public or private school. In 2015 and in 2019 were the heaviest years, and both were authored by then Senator Pan. We are pleased to have and honored to have one of the organizations that have been in advocacy for our children's health rights since 2015, and that is A Voice for Choice Advocacy. A Voice for Choice Advocacy educates, advocates, and empowers people to be fully informed about their health rights with respect to informed choice, transparency, and privacy, including the composition, quality, and short and long-term health effects of all products that go into people's bodies, such as food, water, air, pharmaceuticals, and cosmetics. And it is my honor to introduce A Voice for Choice Advocacy President and Founder, Christina Hildebrand. Hey, Christina, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you here. And I know that you've been a guest of ours before, and you've done a few episodes with us, but just give us a quick summary about yourself and what brought you to this advocacy space.
Yep. So as you mentioned, I started A Voice for Choice Advocacy in 2015, and it was really SB 277, which removed the personal belief exemption in California for school vaccines that got me to advocate and brought me to this place that we are in today, nearly 10 years later. So, before that, I definitely didn't go up to the Capitol and advocate. I just sort of kept to myself. So that really was what spurred it and has lighted the passion for me of doing this.
And we want to just say thank you for everything that A Voice for Choice Advocacy has been doing. And it's crazy to think that it's been 10 years. And we're still going, we're still fighting.
Yes.
Now, before we get into the specific bill language, which are now law, so I should say the law language, can you just give us a quick glimpse of what specific vaccines are required for school here in California?
Yep. So there are sort of 9 diseases that are required vaccines for, but it's really 5 different vaccines. So polio, hepatitis B, measles, mumps, rubella, which is one vaccine. You can't get that split up. Varicella, which is chickenpox, and then the DTaP or Tdap, which is diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, and those also can't be split up. So it's really those. I would say there are more than one dose required of all of those. And if you go to A Voice for Choice Advocacy under the Empower Us column, there's or menu bar, if you click on that, there's a whole article about like what's required, what we're going to go through today, but that gives the number of doses, or you can go to the CDPH website and get the same information.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for everybody watching or listening to us today, I will have all of the resource links available for you, so you don't have to feel like you have to write them down right now. We will have all of that information readily available for you. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about, so it is my understanding that there is certain vaccines have to be, the child has to have them before entering kindergarten. And then there's another, what we would call a checkpoint at 7th grade, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
And so A Voice for Choice Advocacy did have a very successful win last year with AB 659 that would have required the HPV vaccine. If you can let us know a little bit more about that.
Yep. So that was a bill last year that Assemblymember Agia brought forward. And it started off, it sort of morphed as it went along, but it started off as the requirement would be that all 8th through 12th graders would have had to have gotten the HPV vaccine for entry into public or private school. We currently in California, about 30% of teens are not vaccinated for HPV. It's one of those vaccines, it's probably the most controversial vaccine prior to COVID, from a safety standpoint and from an efficacy standpoint. Yeah, of course, the CDC says it's safe and effective, but it does have questions to it. And because it's a sexually related disease that it is trying to prevent, it is one that, parents have conversations with their pediatricians about it and may decide, well, my child isn't actively sexually active right now. And they're going through puberty. We don't want to do vaccines at that point. We're going to wait till they're 16, 17, 18, or when they become sexually active, or not at all. And so an HPV, for 99% of people, if you get HPV, it resolves by itself. So it's a very small percentage that this is targeting, and that it would, if it is effective as the CDC says it is, that it would actually help. And so we fought back on that. We got, schools to write in and say, we don't want this, because they could lose up to 30% of their student population. Assemblymember Agia then changed it to be community college, CSU, and UC universities. And so the public universities here in California would have had to require it. They also pushed back. We pushed back. We made them push back. And then it ended up being that it is a requirement that students get a letter saying that it's recommended by the CDC at 8th grade, and that they have to, and at college entry, and that they're recommended to get it, or advised to get it. And so we saw that as a big win, because it didn't get added to this vaccine schedule that's required for school entry.
That is amazing. And that is a testament to the great work that A Voice for Choice Advocacy does at the Capitol. And we're so thankful that you and your legislative team are up there advocating, meeting with the legislators, and really building those bridges alongside with school districts, superintendents, and of course the college. I don't know what you would call them, college boards. No.
Boards, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I do want to ask, you are a wealth of knowledge. So this is like a very sporadic question, but what is a resource, whether it's a book or a documentary, that you would recommend to a family, parent that is wanting to learn more about their options in regards to vaccines, or that has the most information that would be of value to them?
Yeah. So there are many, many books out there. My favorite book on, and I give this to people who are having babies because it takes you through, is Neil Miller's the Vaccine Safety Manual. And the reason I like it is he goes through every disease, tells you about the history of the disease, the symptoms of the disease, what you can do. I'm going to say naturally, or he has, I believe, some, recommendations for antibiotics and stuff like that. So it's not completely alternative, but what you can do if you get measles, if you get whooping cough, if you get, all these different things. And then he also goes through and breaks down the vaccine and the risks and benefits of the vaccine. And it is all supported by mainstream peer-reviewed journal articles. And so to me, that really gives you an overview of every disease and what the disease is and what the vaccine is. And I like it because of that, because to me, the worst thing I would say is a parent saying, oh, I'm never going to vaccinate my child, and not knowing what to do if your child gets that disease. There are still, some of these diseases it is very unlikely that your child's going to get, like polio or diphtheria. But something like measles is in the US, it's in the world, it's still out there. Chickenpox certainly is, whooping cough is. So for those, if your child gets that, you should definitely know what are the go-to things that you need to have in your house in order to help your child and ensure that they don't end up in the hospital. And I would say that's to me, that's just as important as knowing what the benefits and the risks of the vaccines are.
Very nice. And you guys can all visit A Voice for Choice Advocacy educateadvocate.org, where you can find more resources that Christina does have. I told you guys she's a wealth of knowledge. And so I want to bring it back to the laws that we have in California. And can you walk us through how did we get here? So it's to my understanding that this started way back in 2012 when Senator Pan was just an assemblyman with AB 2109. But how did we go from 2012 to 2019, even now to 2024?
Yes. So, I think this is something that was planned. It wasn't, Senator Pan had a plan for sure. And I think there was when you looked at 2015, how many bills were introduced across the nation, there was clearly a national plan to bring forward bills that would remove the personal belief or the religious exemption. So you can give Senator Pan some credit, but there was a bigger push behind the scenes from it. Who gave that push? I don't know. It's probably the pharmaceutical lobbying, if you go way back, but I don't have the evidence to show, where that came from. But in 2012, he brought forward a bill that before 2012, we just had a personal belief exemption in California that it was a blue card on the front, your doctor put the vaccines on the back, you could just sign it and say, these are against my personal beliefs, and you just handed that to the school, and that was all you needed to do. In 2012, he brought forward a bill, as you said, AB 2109, and that bill required the personal belief exemption that you had to go to the doctor. If you wanted a personal belief exemption, you still had to go to your doctor and you had to get it signed saying that the doctor had talked to you about the risks and the benefits of the vaccines. Actually, probably just the benefits of vaccines. I don't think it said the risks, but talk to you about vaccines. So most doctors are just going to talk to you about the benefits of them. And it didn't matter whether you agreed with the doctor or not. The doctor had to sign it. It was just that you had had this conversation with your doctor. And I remember thinking at that time, so my children had a personal belief exemption. I remember thinking, oh, we've had that conversation with our doctor so many times, like it'll be no problem for her to sign it. Didn't think twice that this could keep escalating. So in 2015, he introduced SB 277, which was a bill that removed the personal belief exemption and left only a medical exemption with a few other exceptions. But at that time, the medical exemption was a very broad medical exemption, and it left it up to the discretion of the doctor as to whether your child should have a medical exemption. And even in the hearings that year, there was discussion about, if a child's sibling had had a vaccine reaction, a severe vaccine reaction. Obviously, if your child has, had a reaction, is now epileptic or has been, put in a wheelchair and is paralyzed, you would never do that again to another child of yours if you know it was the vaccine. Like, you're not going to do that twice and take the risk twice, even if you believe in vaccines. I'm sorry, you're not going to do it as a parent. And so there was conversations about, yes, if there's sibling history or family history from a severe allergic reaction or reaction to the vaccine, that absolutely that should be taken into consideration and that you would be able to get a medical exemption based on that. So it was really left up to the doctors. By 2019, what had happened was there were very few doctors in California that were willing to write vaccine exemptions. So you couldn't go to your regular doctor and get a vaccine exemption. You couldn't, like Kaiser, Stanford, Scripps, like all of them basically told their doctors, you are not writing a vaccine medical exemption. Like, it's not happening here. We believe every child should be vaccinated. The only time that you saw them write them were for example, if kids were having chemotherapy treatment and they couldn't get the live vaccines, or somebody in their household was getting chemotherapy treatment. But those were temporary medical exemptions, and those kids, once that was over, could get vaccinated. So that was the only time you were really seeing those mainstream doctors being allowed to write medical exemptions. Many of the doctors wouldn't even take kids into their practice if they weren't fully vaccinated. So there was definitely a sort of divide in the doctors writing medical exemptions and the doctors not even considering writing them. Even if you needed one, they wouldn't consider writing it. The doctors that were writing medical exemptions were very thorough. I mean, they all made sure they did not want to lose their licenses over this. You know, this is their livelihood. So they were very thorough. They had the children come in, they did genetic testing, they did other allergen testing, and they wrote medical exemptions based on family history, genetics, allergies, those types of things. Now, those are not contraindications to vaccines per the CDC. So the CDC has very, very strict requirements of what they say, oh, this person can't get a vaccination. And it's very strict in the fact that, you know, if you got a vaccine, let's say the MMR vaccine, you're only exempt from the MMR vaccine. You're not exempt from any of the other vaccines that I mentioned before. And so there is no way you can get, per the CDC, a blanket permanent vaccine exemption for a medical exemption for everything. That just doesn't exist. And that was what most of these doctors were writing because they based it on family history. Well, if a child has had a sibling that's had a reaction, that's permanent. that's forever. You're not going to vaccinate that other child based on the genetic, you know, likelihood that they're also going to have a reaction. So what was happening was there were few doctors in California, I would say probably somewhere between 25 and 30, that were writing a lot of vaccine exemptions. And the schools were saying the same names. The CDPH was seeing the same names. And so Senator Pan brought forward a bill in 2019 that basically tightened up those medical exemptions and made it that it was not at the doctor's discretion anymore, that it was only if you had a CDC contraindication, and they had all of these medical exemptions have to be put in the CDPH, the CARE ME system, so online system, and CDPH vets and looks at and reviews every single one of these medical exemptions. So it's no longer, you know, and you have to remember the CDPH doesn't have any access to your children. They've never seen your child, but they can reject these medical exemptions. So getting a medical exemption in California is basically very unlikely, unless again you have oncology or, you know, chemotherapy or something like that that's temporary. Temporary exemptions, I've seen, you know, we have the numbers of how many exemptions have been granted in California, and the temporary exemptions are much more likely than the permanent exemptions. There are very few permanent exemptions. If they're given permanently, it's for one vaccine. I have not seen a medical exemption that says you don't, you know, you're not being vaccinated for anything else, even if you've been paralyzed by a vaccine.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is just to hear it again. It's so it's like everything comes up. And for those of you that are familiarized with, you know, my own personal story, I got involved in SB 276 in 2019 when we were left with pretty much no medical exemption. I want to go back really quick and talk about the SB 277 language. And you guys will hear from Christy in a little bit, who will talk about families with exceptional needs. And we've got a whole focus on that. But I do want to talk about religious exemption. So personal, to my understanding, when they removed the personal belief exemption, that was the umbrella of any philosophical or religious exemption.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what is a Voice for Choice Advocacy working on to bring hope to California? Because as of right now, we've got two options, right? It's either homeschool or move out of state. Is that
Or I mean, there are families on, you know, that are taking a slower schedule or vaccinating. But yes, those are the options. If your child doesn't have exceptional needs and is on a valid IEP, which, as you said, Christy will talk to, the options really are homeschool, vaccinate, or move out of state. We are working, so you're right, yes, personal belief exemption removed the religious exemption or any religious piece of this. And we're working on, so there was a win in Mississippi now 2 years, I want to say, no, it was the beginning of last year. And it didn't reinstate. Mississippi never had a religious exemption. So it instated a religious exemption in Mississippi. And you have to realize Mississippi is a very, you know, Republican state, very, very different from California. So you can't just be like, oh, well, file this lawsuit and we're going to win it in California too. But when that was filed and they won, I went to our lawyers and I said, you know, I really want to put forward a religious exemption lawsuit here in California. We had a lawsuit in 2016. Unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. And at that point, the Supreme Court would not have ruled in our favor. And so we decided not to appeal it all the way up there. This year, so last year, we filed in December, we filed a religious exemption lawsuit. And basically, we're saying that it is unconstitutional for California not to have a religious exemption to these school vaccine requirements. California, came back, they wanted a motion to dismiss our case. Their basis is sort of on 100-year-old, about 100-year-old, maybe more than 100-year-old lawsuits that upheld that vaccine requirements are okay to have. Thankfully, in the last 6 months to 12 months, we have seen a number of lawsuits that have been decided in favor of the plaintiff. Now, most of these were employees and employer lawsuits, but they gave legitimacy, not that it was not legitimate, but they really confirmed that yes, a religious exemption is allowed when there are vaccine requirements, and an employer has to allow the employee to have a religious exemption based on their religious beliefs and not based on what the employer interprets as a good enough religious belief, but that just a person having religious beliefs against vaccination should allow them to be able to go to work and do their job without having to be vaccinated. And so those, along with the Mississippi win, really have given us I'm going to say the oomph to take this lawsuit forward, and are really hopeful that we can get a religious exemption for childhood vaccines in California for school. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. I mean, we filed it in December and we're in August, and our hearing date is just on the motion to dismiss. So this isn't even on like the actual crux of the case. This is just the other side saying we don't think they even have standing to have this case is in September. So it's going to take 2 to 3 years. Just an example, most of the COVID lawsuits, they were filed in 2020, 2021 when those vaccine mandates were rolling in, and they are only just being decided this year in 2024. So that just shows you how long it takes for these lawsuits to just move forward. So we're hopeful that the judge will grant us that they don't have, or not grant the other side the motion to dismiss, that we can move forward with the case. Once we do that, it'll probably be the beginning of next year before we have any form of hearing. We have to file briefs, so we have to, move forward with it. So it's not going to be a quick lawsuit, but we are hopeful that we will have a win along the way, and that we will get a religious exemption for children in California to be able to use that, for parents to be able to use that. And just to be clear, it's the religious beliefs of the parents, one parent or both parents, and it's not the religious beliefs of the child, because the parents govern the parents govern your vaccination prior to when you're 18.
That gives me so much hope. And I hope for any of you guys listening and watching us that inspires you to link arms with the Voice for Choice Advocacy. Go to their website, be curious about what they're working on, both at the Capitol, because you do also have a bill through the legislature that will remove bisphenol, all forms of bisphenol, from children's feeding and teething products. What bills they're supporting and of course opposing, and also litigation. And if you would like to donate to a Voice for Choice Advocacy, I'm sure that they'd be more than happy. They've got a new merch line. I was looking at their website, super amazing merch that has just come out, and all efforts, of course, I'm assuming would go to things like the litigation. So
Yep.
Christina, I'm so thankful for you. Is there anything else you would like to add, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so avoiceforchoiceadvocacy.org is our main website, and all of this information is on there. We have a lot of resources, and just as you said, there's litigation, there's legislation, there's a section where the California school requirements is called Empower Us, that just has a whole lot of resources on various topics that you can go through, and we give you sort of a step-by-step guide to how to do things, everything from these vaccine requirements to things like growing trees and collecting rainwater. So wide variety of topics there. I would say I appreciate you saying donate to us. You know, these lawsuits are not inexpensive. We pay our lawyers. They do give us a discount, but it is extremely expensive for them to go back and forth, and you know, it's just a long drawn out process that takes many, many hours. And so if it is something, if this religious exemption is something that you would like to see brought back or instated in California schools in the vaccine requirements, please do give a donation. And there isn't any donation too small or too large.
Awesome, Christina. Thank you
So
so
thank
much
you.
for being a voice for health rights in California. And I love the three words that are used to describe a voice for choice advocacy in California, which is information, empowerment, and health rights. We get into requirements and resources for families who have children with exceptional needs. And we had to bring in the experts. This incredible organization has been a voice for children with exceptional needs and their families for many, many years. And they are truly the only organization in California doing this incredible work. And we're so honored to have Educate.Advocate here with us today. Educate.Advocate is a California statewide nonprofit 501c3 organization that serves families with exceptional needs. And their mission, I love the way that they've broken down their mission, is to, number one, assist and provide support to anyone with or connected to someone with special needs and or disabilities at any age, to provide a website with resources and materials useful for families with special needs, to provide referrals to low-cost advocacy providers, and to have special needs family-friendly events. I love this one. All events are open to all, regardless of severity of disability, special needs, or non-disability. They encourage inclusion. And part of their mission is also to educate our communities of the potential environmental triggers which may hinder the healing of persons with disabilities or special needs. And I am just so happy to have a great friend of mine here today who's just an incredible advocate, Christy from Educate.Advocate. Christy, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. We're so happy. And I know that you've been here before, and we've done a few episodes on Stand Up and Take Action with Stand Up California. But for those of our new community members, if you can just share a little bit about yourself and how you got into this advocacy space.
Yes. So I'm Christy Sepulveda-Burchit. I have been in Educate.Advocate since its inception. I founded it along with some fellow families, and it's been over 10 years. We got started because we wanted to help our own families, our own children who have special needs, and help out each other and then other families. So that's kind of how we came together, and we just grew from there. Started doing, conferences and events, and then started reaching out and going to school board meetings, speaking out there, SELPA events, and then got involved with advocating about legislation, and it just went from there. So, and that's kind of our inception and what we've been doing from the start.
And we just want to say thank you so much for providing a safe place for families. A lot of the times, I homeschool, and when I got started homeschooling, I felt like a fish out of water. Like I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where to start. But to me, the first, thing that was so helpful was community. And I think we all need to find the community that just makes us feel heard and makes us feel seen and makes us feel comfortable, and this is life, and we're just so thankful for everything Educate.Advocate has done, is doing, and will continue to do for families with exceptional needs.
Definitely.
So we talked a little bit about SB 277 earlier, and this bill passed in 2015, authored by then Senator Pan.
Yes.
SB 277 did remove the personal leave exemption, and under it was the religious exemption, philosophical exemption, right? Because they were all under the umbrella of a personal leave exemption. However, at the last minute, I want to say, kind of, sort of, there was some language put in there to protect our most vulnerable children. So, Christy, if you can just get into what happened, take us back to 2015. What happened? What was that language? And what does that mean for the families who have children with exceptional needs?
Yeah, so this definitely came up prior to the final hearing, which would have been in the Assembly Health Committee. And it came up as a concern because there are federal rights that are given to students who have an IEP, meaning that they have a right to their education, their in-person education, their supports, all of those things, their services. So there was amendment language that I'm sure was discussed behind the scenes that this bill was not going to make it out until the amendment was accepted. So that happened in the Assembly Health Committee. They discussed it. I recently reviewed the transcripts of that hearing, so I'm pretty familiar with the conversation that happened. And it was clarified what was going to be in the language. And so it's very clear that students on this is the way I say it to families. I definitely do not call it an exemption, an IEP exemption. And in my mind, it is not that. It doesn't operate like an exemption, like a medical exemption or a personal belief exemption. It is just this. If a student at an IEP is able to receive their services, supports, and education that are outlined in their IEP, regardless of their vaccination status. And I know it's a long-winded way to put it, but that is really what this boils down to. They are allowed to get their in-person education supports, regardless of their vaccine status, if they're on an IEP. So that is how I say it. And that was made very clear in the questions and answers that happened during the Assembly Health hearing on SB 277.
Great. And what was the biggest takeaway of that hearing for you as an advocate for special needs? I mean, was that a win? And for those of you that may not know, or who you haven't gone back and watched some of our previous episodes, an amendment is just either language that has been removed or language that has been added to the bill, like Christy said, so that it can pass. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not so much, but we can celebrate amendments as good things. So, Christy, what did that mean for you? Was it a win? Was it?
I don't know necessarily if people felt that it was a win at the time, because if you recall, the medical exemption that was given during SB 277 was kind of expanded. So people were, I think, more focused on that and more happy with that success. This was just an issue as far as students on an IEP. This was an issue that the committee and probably select legislators felt that this needed to be changed because they needed to get in line with federal law, and there would be problems in the way of probably litigation if they didn't get the bill in line with federal law. So it was a win in that we didn't have to go after litigation, for this issue, because it was it was taken on. And I don't think that Senator Pan was too excited about this particular amendment, but it wouldn't have passed out of the committee if he hadn't taken it. That was made very clear. If you can still go back and watch the video, and I encourage you to take a look, because it was kind of a lot going on in the discussions. That was very clear during the committee hearing, was that he needed to take this amendment in order for the bill to get through that final committee.
Okay, and maybe we will add that conversation or that hearing onto Stand Up California. Maybe if Educate.Advocate does put it up on your YouTube channel, we can share it it would be great to go back and just re-listen to the hearings. I recently went back for the religious exemption portion of it, and there were so many conversations that happened that are very important for us to just go back and listen with a fresh set of ears.
Right.
So let's talk about the process. So a family, they have a child with exceptional needs. What would be the first step that they should take if they believe that, their child would qualify, they think their child qualifies for an IEP?
Yeah, so anyone can refer their child to be assessed to the district, and they can, write an email, write a letter, submit it to the district and say, I think my student needs to be assessed in these areas of disability. I refer families to a website through Disability Rights California. They have a template letter for requesting assessments, and I frequently send that template link to families to utilize to do an assessment. And what I want to caution people to say is, don't do this because you're just trying to get out of vaccines. If you truly feel, or someone, a teacher, someone connected to your child truly feels there are learning issues that are prohibiting them from participating in the classroom, prohibiting their learning, then definitely you want to go this route and get your student the help that they need. So that's kind of the first step. There is also on Disability Rights California a great, which they've kept it up all of these years. That was my reference when my son was very young, called Special Education Rights and Responsibilities. And if you notice on our website, we have a similar sounding page. I'm a big believer that all parents, not just special needs parents, have rights and responsibilities. So this is written by an attorneys, but it's a question answer format, and it's very easy to read and understand language, just going through all of the steps, everything involving the process with basically the special education process. So those are the references that I refer families to routinely to get started on this particular journey.
And we so appreciate your transparency and having these resources listed. I am a resource parent. I love to have them at a click of a button, and you guys have made it super easy on your website also to go and just find things. I do just want to let everybody watching us today that we will be linking any resources named today on the description of this episode. And if you have any questions, you can also just reach out to us and we will get those resources, the resource links over to you. And I do want to remind everybody watching us as well, as Christy said, this is not an exemption. We have talked about the laws that did essentially removed or made it really hard for families in California to obtain exemptions for their children. And this is why many of us, myself included, we are now homeschooling because we were left with no option for our children to attend public or private school. But also there's an importance of, linking arms with the organizations here today. And we heard of Voice for Choice Advocacy and their litigation efforts and everything that they're doing for health rights in California. And we really need to amplify what they're doing and just share it with people, because people need to be informed that even though an IEP is not an exemption, there is still, organizations moving forward with trying to remedy the fact that we have really no functioning exemptions for children that do not have disabilities. So I just want to ensure that you all remember that, and please make sure you follow both the Voice for Choice Advocacy and Educate.Advocate. Now, I do have another question for you, Christy, and I've been curious about this one actually, just in the recent few weeks. But has Educate.Advocate, have you as an organization come across school districts pushing back on IEPs and giving parents a hard time? And if parents do experience this, what can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, ever since the bill was signed into law, it's been, and we're almost at the 10-year mark, if you can believe it. And our website, which was already in existence in 2015, added a page having to do with this very issue where we put everything. So that's our SB 277 IEP page on our website. And if you take a look at the website, you will see a pretty documented history of compliance complaints and other, when parents filed for it's called due process. There's orders on there going back all of these years since it was signed. So there seems to be, districts who have challenged it. I can say as of today, as we're recording it, that parents have been 100% successful with their students in keeping them in school, their student on an IEP. And, it's been working really well. So that's what I can say for today, that it's been working really, really well. And the law has been very clearly on parents and students' side. And our website with that page gives you all the information, including, for the first step, if a district says no, they can't come to school, there's a letter, a template letter on that page at the very top to submit to the district as a first step. And usually that's as far as it goes. Like, the information in that letter is sufficient for the district to listen and understand. But some districts, push back, and you can see the list of compliance complaints. I haven't even counted how many there are there, but there's quite a few. And again, all found in favor of the student to stay in school. So that's kind of how it's gone. We hoped that the California Department of Education would issue something to make that very clear, but they haven't. All we have is these compliance complaints. And earlier this year, there was a stay put order, which we have up on our website. I personally love the language the judge used throughout the stay put order. A stay put order is when a family files for due process. That's like a hearing, right? Because the school district doesn't want the student in school because of their vaccine status, student on an IEP. The first step is a hearing where it's called like a stay put hearing, which means that either the judge will find in favor of the family and say, no, this student needs to stay put, stay in their placement while we're going to go for the hearing. We're going to do the hearing process. Or the judge could say, no, the student needs to, like the district says, not stay in their placement. That's why it's called the stay put. They either stay put or they don't. And so the judge ruled, and I think this was in April of this year, that the student need to stay put in their placement. And I would have copied and pasted pretty much the whole order, because it was beautiful language the way that the judge wrote. I want to say one thing about this that I've noticed as of late. There doesn't seem to be any issues, at least as of late, with many of the school districts. If the student is a student on an IEP in a classroom filled with students on an IEP or medically fragile students, the only issue they seem to have, or when they seem to have an issue, is when it's a student on an IEP in a general education classroom with other general education students. So talk about discrimination. You only have a problem with that student on an IEP not being vaccinated if they're around the general education population, not around the medically fragile IEP students. So, I mean, that just sounds so wrong to me on a whole other level. And I think the judge did a good job of speaking to that in the Corona case. So it's not a long read. I want to say it's 5 pages, maybe around there.
Okay.
It's not a very long, it's under 10. So if you have a chance, take the time to read it and enjoy and bask in the beauty of that language, because I think he did a good job of highlighting, getting to the crux of why that's a problem. So among other things that were covered in that stay put order. Yeah.
And to families who have children with exceptional needs, you've heard it from Christy, the law is on your side. You've got Educate.Advocate on your side. Please don't feel like you don't have options. You've got a great organization behind you. And if you have any questions, any questions at all, I know that Christy and the Educate.Advocate team, they're ready to support you in any possible way. And this is why we had to bring in the experts today so that she can just break it down for us, and exactly what options are there for children who are on an IEP in a school. Now, Christy, I do want to ask if there's anything else you would like to add today. I think you've given us such great information and you've broken it down super amazingly for us, and we're thankful for you. But is there anything else that you would like to add? And also, just out of curiosity, is there any legislation you guys are working on this year? Because we didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of legislation, but Educate.Advocate has worked in the past with legislators to sponsor legislation, and this is just a testament that their work continues to grow. They're working hand in hand with legislators at the Capitol, and that's huge. That's a huge milestone for an organization, at least to me, to be sponsoring legislation. So 2 questions to end. Is there anything you would like to add? And are you guys working on any legislation? We've got, I think, a few weeks left, if not like 2 weeks left of the legislative session. So
Right.
give us an insight, Christy.
Well, first of all, besides our website lists a couple of advocates on that page. And I don't think they'd want me to name them by name, but you can see their names there if you go to the website. And I just want to lift them up and thank them and praise them for being wonderful advocates for families. There's other people that help as well beyond that, but these 2 are fearless fighters, and they've been that way since the bill passed. So I wanted to just take a moment to lift them up. I think I should say their first name. They both happen to have the same name, so Shannon. So I want to lift the Shannons up. They've just been wonderful and just a light to, I don't even know how many countless families across the state. And yeah, they're
This
wonderful.
would be that part in my Zoom meetings. Usually when I'm in regular Zoom meetings or team meetings, I overuse the emojis and I'm like, heart, celebration. So if I could put like 100 hearts for the Shannon, this is what I would be doing. And if they're watching us today, just know that in my heart, I'm putting heart emojis, and we're so thankful for you, Shannon, and of course, Christy, for all of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're amazing. And I don't know if they, want to be front and center. So I just wanted to, their information is there if the help is needed, but definitely I would say, if help is needed, first email us, see the page with the website, then email us for the Educate.Advocate email. And then, if your situation requires more assistance, like beyond what can help you in the first steps, then we might need to involve the Shannons. So the Shannons. So I just wanted to point that out, that they're amazing. And legislation. So we have a bill that we are co-sponsors on. So there's other sponsors as well. SB 445. It's an IEP translation bill. It was just amended by the committee. So it's now a translation bill simply for an IEP template. So that's as it stands today, as we're talking. There's been, a lot of changes because the appropriations committee had just amended it. And that just happened this week. So we just
Bill, did you guys become involved with this bill because there had been translation delays on IEPs, or what was the reasoning behind bringing
Yeah.
this?
So families that have students on an IEP, sometimes they were not getting a translated copy of their IEP for months on end. And, you need these things in a timely fashion in order to be able to know what the goals are, what is needed to assist your child. And they haven't gotten this. So unfortunately, our iteration of this bill, it's been attempted several times and unfortunately vetoed several times. And this year being a not so great budget year, we expected the same. So we did amend it, but it got amended, like I said, by the committee itself, appropriations, to, kind of pretty much take away the rest of the bill and just leave translation of the IEP template. So that's kind of out of the hands of the, Senator Portantino is the author, as far as, the committee had done that. So but I should say the translation of the IEP template was something that we had put in our amended language. So it isn't like something we didn't want. We did want that, just to clarify. But it was just like our real goal was after the timeline of the IEP document in general. And we, unfortunately, were not able to achieve that.
Could it be brought back maybe next year to deal with the portion of the bill that was unfortunately amended out of the bill?
Right. Yeah, we're hoping. We're going to continue. We have a coalition now of organizations that are really working on this and trying different avenues. And we just keep building up and just working together. And the great news is this last year, we've talked to a lot of different entities, in state government and other lobby type of groups. So have gotten to know these kinds of entities. So that's really good too, to have that, relationship start building. You need that because you need allies for, any kind of future bills that come up, whether good or bad. You need some allies there.
Yes,
So.
and we covered this in our legislation video, but to those watching, this is why I appreciate A Voice for Choice Advocacy, Educate.Advocate, and we'll talk about CHCA. They have really built those relationships, like Chrissy said, not only with legislators in the Capitol by supporting their bills and, yes, opposing, but realistically, we need to support the good things happening in the legislature as well to build those relationships and get things happening and moving for our children, for our families here in California. So I appreciate that from these organizations and all of the work that they continue to do at the Capitol as well. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And where can people find you? Do you guys have an Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel? Where can they find you? And again, guys, don't think you have to write it down really quickly as Chrissy's going through it. We will link all of the resources in the description box. And if you can't find something you're looking for, feel free to send a message and we can send you the links there.
Yes. So we're pretty much everywhere. We do have a YouTube channel. We have Twitter. So we're Educate.Advocate on Twitter. And we have Instagram, Educate.Advocate there. Facebook, same thing. We also have a Facebook group for families who need that. Telegram. What else? I think that's all.
And then, of course, your website, which is www.educateadvocacy.com. Okay, I always have to talk about that one, whether
Right.
it's .com, but that's where you
Yeah.
guys can find their website as well. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much, Christy. I truly appreciate the time that you have spent to just break it all down for us, give us all the information that families need to know. And for our Stand Up California community watching us, please don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified when we do have more episodes. And of course, please share with those who may need this information. Thank you for joining us today. We cannot wait to see you soon. And remember, nothing will change until we stand up California.